In April of 1979, Yoshiyuki Tomino and Hajime Yatate introduced the world to their creation, Mobile Suit Gundam, in about the most 70s way imaginable. As we all know, the historical records tell us that disco died in Chicago on July 6th of the same year, but what most people don't know is that space disco lived on until January 6th, 1980, when the 43-episode run of Mobile Suit Gundam came to a close. While the series wasn't as popular on release as many people think, it did leave us with two things that outgrew their original source material: giant robots and plastic model kits of said giant robots. Plastic Gundam model kits, which we now refer to as Gunpla, were a massive success and were enough to propel the series forward into myriad directions, including 4 TV series, 4 OVA series, 15 theatrical releases, and a bunch of one-off specials. That's not counting the dizzying amount of alternate universe content, manga spin-offs, video games, collectibles, and hundreds upon hundreds of model kits. There are a few things, however, that have stayed consistent over the lifespan of the Gundam meta series. Things like political intrigue and moral gray areas and decisions about what's right versus what's necessary. And of course, the titular giant robots. And each of these said giant robots wouldn't exist without Kunio Okawara's brainchild and granddaddy of them all. This is Genesis, the RX-78-2 Gundam. The one that started it all. Every mobile suit bearing the Gundam nameplate harkens back to this design, with many modern hero suits paying homage to its iconic look in many ways. Things like the head-mounted V-fin and predominantly white color scheme to massive beam rifles and shields all follow the lineage of this iconic suit. Some designs are more direct representations of the RX-78-2, some are more radical, and others are just wonderfully bizarre. Others, however, choose to take this design template and rewrite everything we know about what a Gundam is and what it can be. Welcome everyone to the ASW-G-08 Gundam Barbatos, a 60-foot tall, 300-year-old nano-laminate powerhouse that is the first hero suit of the newly established post-disaster timeline. Many of the suits in this timeline have a generally more mechanical feel, and the lack of energy weapons, for the most part anyway, make the suits of this timeline feel more like something that could actually exist in the real world. The Barbatos is the ultimate expression of this industrial brutalist design language, fused with 30-plus years of Gundam history. Now, I would be lying if I said that it was love at first sight for me with this suit. In fact, I wasn't a big fan of the design at all when it first came out. What with all of its unnecessary lines and angles and polyhedrons, it ended up looking like something more out of a Michael Bay movie than out of a Japanese anime, so I decided to consign it to the annals of history and left it out of my backlog for the time being. Plus, seriously, the best weapon the designers could come up with for this thing is a bat? Sure, you could call it a mace if that makes you feel better, but I'm sorry, it's a spiky bat. Other suits have badass weaponry like massive rifles and beam sabers and cannons and missile launchers, and they gave you a fucking bat. What the hell are you going to do with a boring-ass, simple-ass, lazy-ass bat? Mika!
KO. You win.
Yatta, indeed. This subsequent beatdown quickly changed my mind about the suit, and I decided to pick up a kit for myself, along with the Grays, which was the recipient of the aforementioned beatdown just a moment ago, and went to town. And that got me to thinking, there's probably a lot of people out there just getting into this show right now, thanks to the pretty strong ratings on Toonami. Right now it's getting about 1 million or so viewers every week, which is great to see for a new series. And because of that overall success, there's a very good chance that there's some people out there picking up a Barbatos or a Graze as their first kit as well. They're probably going online and seeing things like the high-resolution kit and thinking, holy shit, this thing is awesome! And borrow their mom's car to go down to the local hobby shop. Or go to Amazon on their smartphones, because that's what I'm told us millennials do these days, in the hopes of picking one up. That is, until they see that Mr. High-Res is going to cost them better than half of their fast food paycheck. There's already plenty of coverage out there for these super fancy, not to mention super expensive kits. And don't get me wrong, if I had the means, I would do a perfect grade every time I wanted to put together a build video, but that's just not going to happen. Plus, I'd run out after about 10 or 11. There's only a few of them after all. So, instead, I wanted to do some thinking about what happens whenever somebody's first getting into the hobby. If you're going and picking up a Graze or a Barbatos or anything like that, you're looking to probably spend about $20 on your first kit. So what can you do with that $20 to make something unique and more than just the kit that you're building? That's the thinking behind Cheapgunpla, Gundam Barbatos. So, we know what kit we're going to be going with, and we know about how much money we're going to have left over when all is said and done. The kit itself is going to run us $16, which leaves us with $4 to spend on things that we're going to use to customize our kit. Not a whole lot of budget, so tools are pretty much out of the question. Paints are difficult too. A pot of Tamiya acrylics will run you about $3 after tax at your local hobby shop, and that's not including the thinner that's desperately needed in order to make everything look proper when you're applying said Tamiya acrylic paints. Plus you need to worry about brushes, and you're looking at least $3 for anything that's halfway decent. So regular paints are pretty much out of the question as well. Not a whole lot of options then whenever we want to customize this kit. We can use technical pens, but what if you want to do a full palette swap? There needs to be another option. And luckily there is, which is why I'm actually not on the way to the hobby shop today. I'm going to the pharmacy. We're buying nail polish. Now, I promise this isn't as ridiculous as it sounds. And yes, I can already hear the bitter veteran kit builders moaning through their computer screens, but the fact is, if you have $20 and you want to do something more than just build the kit, you're gonna have to improvise. Each of these bottles ran me $1 a piece, so I was able to pick up 3 colors and some clear coat. Now that we have our materials, we can get started. Today, we're going to focus on the head and the torso. We don't have any hobby snips because that would put us over budget, so we're going to have to snap these pieces out of the runners by hand. If you do it right though, you could still yield perfectly acceptable results with a cheap build. By twisting the parts out of the runner, the applied pressure stays largely on the piece rather than on the runner, which leaves much of the nubs on the runner rather than on your piece. Once we've popped out the pieces, it's time to begin painting. With nail polish. This is probably a good time to talk about expectations, by the way. $10 paint bottles and $150 airbrush are always going to look better than cheap nail polish literally every time. After all, there's a reason why Ferrari doesn't paint their cars in Revlon. But what this will do is give you a taste of what can be done with what materials. Perfection, after all, isn't the goal with something like this. It's just not going to be perfect. The goal is to make something fun that'll look neat on your desk. Now we're going to speed things along, and what you're seeing here is I'm applying the red coat directly to the model along with the black coat there on the gray areas. The reason I'm doing that is because the clear coat wasn't really working in the way that it was originally intended. I was trying to use it instead as more of a protective base. Things like thinners and nail polish remover, which is often suggested, can be corrosive depending on how much you use, so you want to be very careful about using those materials to thin the paints. Granted, that does give you a more tacky look like you're seeing here on the chest plate, which I eventually removed because of how tacky it was. Just about finished with the head here as well, the most iconic part of any Gundam model kit. And just finishing up a little bit of touch-up on the what used to be yellow V-fin. Gotta get all those pieces nice and cleaned up. And there we are. We're well on our way to a full nail polish palette swap. Next time, we're going to see how the Barbatos stacks up to some of its more traditional mobile suit brethren and knock out a few more sections of the build. In the meantime, get out to a hobby shop and start building some of your own bad Gunpla. Take care.